Thank you. Thank you.
There is one host and 7 participants in this conference.
Okay, 7 on the phones and 5 of us here. That's plenty. I think it's time to give supply. So let's talk about supply. It's a funny subject because it's surprisingly simple to understand, but the doing of it is not nearly as simple. Living. Well, we'll talk about that later. That's supposedly a topic of a subname of this class is living the infinite way. So we'll have to talk maybe next week or the week after about how to live in a manner that exemplifies these principles, because it's one thing to understand them and another thing to live according to them or live with them or incorporate them in your life. In any event, let's do supply. I think it'll be short and sweet, and see where we go from there. The first thing that came to me on this topic is Joel and Jesus and everybody else's incessant statement that the kingdom of God is within you. And this, of course, is the foundation of everything. And it's unfortunate that, the word within is a very strange word, because the word within does not mean within your physical body or what you think is your physical body. It does not mean that within at all, because you are consciousness. And consciousness is spirit. And God is spirit. God is expressed as individual beings, which are our individual consciousnesses. So the kingdom of God is within you means that the kingdom of God is within our individual consciousnesses. Not within the physical body, it's not within anything in terms of time and space, but it's within the individual consciousnesses that we are. And it's also true that, when we discussed it earlier, that all of God is in each individual consciousness, just as all of your subconsciousness is involved in each of these individuals in your dream. So all of God is within each individual consciousness, although different aspects of God are formed into each individuality, each individualization. In any event, the entire kingdom of God is within your consciousness, my consciousness. And God is the substance of all form. And form's a funny word, because when I say form, I will try to mean the spiritual form, the idea that God formed as its each individualization. And what we think of as forms, as material forms, are our material sense of the God forms that are the individualizations. It's a funny thing talking about a form of consciousness, since, well, I guess it can be, we can talk about it being formed in mind at least, but we can think of a form of consciousness as like an idea, like my entire consciousness is whatever it is, but I can focus on a particular idea, and then I can think about that idea and expand about that idea. And so I think of the forms that God is expressed as different ideas, and this idea is an artist, and this idea is a teacher, and this idea is a healer, and this idea is a cockroach, and this idea is a slab of granite, and God is expressed as all these ideas, all these forms, and God is the only substance of all these forms. So the point of everything so far is that all of God is within you. And God is infinite. So all of infinite God is within you. And what we think of as supply, like money, is our material sense of God. God is the substance of all form. God is the source of all forms that we see. God is, Jill used the word in one of the audios we heard this week, the shadow. And I like that. What I see, let's go straight into substance. What I see as a dollar bill is my material sense of God's supply. Okay, God is supply, and God, one form of God's supply is apparently monetary, and what I see as a dollar bill is my sense of God as supply, and it's like it's a shadow of the God supply, in that if there were no God supply, there would be no dollar bill. What everything we see as material is a shadow of some spiritual form, individualization of God. So what we tend to think of as supply is really our material sense of the infinite supply that God is. And from that, well, we get two things. First of all, there is no supply separate from the substance of supply, and Joel said there is no prosperity separate and apart from the substance of prosperity. I remember one of his audios years ago I heard that I just loved. He said, you all want supply, but you don't want what gives supply, and you want health, but you don't want what gives health, and you want peace, but you don't want what gives peace. And what he's saying is we want all these material shadows, senses of these things, but we don't want the thing that they are shadows or the material sense of. And that's backwards, because it's the material sense that does not have any real existence, and that which they are the material sense of is our real supply. So money is the material sense of God as monetary supply, and companionship is the material sense of God as companionship of oneness, and health is the material sense of God as perfection and harmoniousness. So everything that we're dealing with materially is a reflection of, or a shadow of, or a material sense of the corresponding thing, corresponding aspect of God, of spiritual God. What all this translates down to, and the important thing to get from all of those points, is that supply is within you. Because the kingdom of God is within you, God is within you, the substance of all form is within you, the forms are within you. So supply, the source of your supply, is within you, and again remember that within means within your consciousness, not within your physical body or your house or anything material, but supply is the source of supply, what you call supply, what we call supply, is within our own individual consciousness. And all of supply is within each of our own individual consciousnesses. So there's no question about supply or lack of supply. There's the question of experiencing it. An aspect of that falls out of that is that we must not seek things, but that which appears as things. We must not seek material supply, but we must seek that which appears as supply. We must seek God, in other words, seek the experience of the presence of God. Supply cannot come to us. And when I say come to us, I'm talking about in the sense of out of that which we think of as the material world, because what we consider to be the material world and potential sources of supply, and by this I include husbands or wives or parents or jobs or financial institutions or stocks or securities or anything like that. Supply cannot come to us from that, because those are all expressions of what is within us, and supply is within us. So we can't think of supply as coming to us. We have to think of God as coming out from within us. And this is the turnaround that is the whole secret. Supply is outflow, it is not income. The kingdom of God is within us, all of God is within us, all of God is all of infinite supply, and it is already within us. And the process, therefore, is bringing it from within us into experience, which is the same process as everything else about God and spirituality. The process is always about bringing into our experience that which is already within our consciousness, but not within our current awareness. And this is what we mean by realization. We could say that our problem is not getting supply, our problem is realizing supply. Making it real, realizing supply, and that's what we need to do, realize supply. Meg Johnson used to talk about supply quite a bit, and after listening to all of her tapes, there are two things that she said that I try to operate from. I have, I can. And this would be the appropriate response for any request that is made of you or any demand that is made upon you. The answer to anybody asking you for anything is, I have, I can, because what I have is the infinite supply of God within me, and we're just talking about expressing it. And this is the basis of the two biblical stories that are typically brought up as demonstrations of supply. The one is the poor widow who was so broke she was selling her son into slavery to pay her debts, and she called on the prophet, I think it was Elijah or Elijah, and the prophet said, "What do you have in your house?" In your house, we're often told in biblical passages, mean in your consciousness. What do you have in your house, he asked, but this to us means, what do you have in your consciousness? And her answer was a few drops of oil. And so he said, okay, begin to pour. And she began to pour the little bit of oil she had, and the pouring kept going and going and going and going and going endlessly. And this is just exactly talked about supply. she had a few drops of oil, and she started pouring it, started sharing it, started putting it out into her experience. You know, when it was sitting back up there on the shelf, it was not part of her experience or anybody else's, and it was useless. But when she just started pouring it out into what we call the outer world, when she started pouring it out, then it flowed endlessly, then it multiplied. And Joel talks about this a lot, and he says several times that if you have just one truth about God and you take it into meditation and you ponder on it a little bit, a second truth will come to you. And if you ponder on the two truths, a third truth will show up, and a fourth and a fifth, and on and on and on. And this is the same principle exactly. By pondering the first truth, you're what we would call pouring it, you're realizing it, you're putting it into active expression, you're becoming aware of it is another good word for pouring it. Pouring it, it means putting it out there into your awareness consciousness, that which you are aware of. And so pondering it is focusing your awareness on it, which means pouring it, and so it multiplies. And the other example, of course, is the feeding the multitudes. And it's the same principle exactly. They said, we need to feed these multiples. They haven't eaten in a day and a half, and they're all starving. What can we do? And Jesus said, what do we have? Not, oh my God, we need to go get something. He said, what do we have? And the answer is, a few fish and a couple of loaves of bread. And he said, pass it out. Pour. Begin giving it out. And so they did. They started breaking bread and passing it out to people. And everybody was fed, and there were 12 baskets full left over. And it's exactly parallel to a few drops of oil and pouring. They had something, and they put it out into their awareness, and spiritual things multiply. And so they didn't divide up the bread among the 5,000 people. They gave out pieces of bread. My image of that is, it's hard to imagine how they could do that, but I sort of picture that they got a sack with some bread in there, and they reach into the sack and tear off a chunk of bread and hand it to somebody. And nobody can see what's happening inside the sack. But they tear off a big chunk of bread and hand it to somebody, and they reach back into the sack and tear off a big chunk of bread and hand it to the next guy, and they keep reaching into the sack and tearing off big chunks of bread and handing it to people, and the multiplying is happening inside the sack, inside our consciousness, but inside the spirit, and the material things seem to multiply because there's an infinite amount of bread and an infinite amount of fish and an infinite amount of money and an infinite amount of everything inside that sack, or in your house or in your consciousness. So those two stories are really the whole story about supply. The question, of course, is, what can I do? A couple more points here, and then we must not seek things, but that which appears as things, which is to say, every prayer or treatment that seeks to demonstrate supply must fail, because by that demonstrating supply, we're talking about demonstrating things, and trying to demonstrate things, praying for them or treating for them or doing anything at all, trying to demonstrate things, going to a practitioner for things, for more money, must fail, because we're talking about material things, and therefore we're in humanhood, and therefore we're not in spirit. And if we're in humanhood, things divide, whereas if we're in spirit, things multiply. So we cannot seek to demonstrate supply. Joel says this, I've heard it so many times in the past 2 or 3 weeks on our audios. The only demonstration that we can seek is the demonstration of the presence of God. In other words, the introduction of God into our awareness. And then God will appear as what's necessary for our fulfillment. We have God in our life and God revealing more and more of itself to us, and the omni-activity looks like not providing us with what we want, but the omni-activity looks like providing us with what we need for our fulfillment and to express that aspect of God which we are designed as a particular individualization to express. So we are sure that the fullness of God as the individualization that I am, as the idea that I am, is going to be expressed through me, and all I really need to do is get God into my life so that it can reveal that to me. And that's what he means by, demonstrate the presence of God, experience the presence of God. And I just got another little point here. Which isn't in my notes, but I do recall him saying it, and it's true. If we have a demonstration of money showing up, and we think we've demonstrated money, then that's it. The demonstration is over. But if we realize that that's proof that we've demonstrated God, then we still have this unlimited God in our awareness here, currently demonstrating as the money we needed, but still here and available to demonstrate as next month's rent or the house we need or the whatever we need. So if we look at the demonstration, if we look at money as showing up as a demonstration of money, then that's it. But if we look at it as a demonstration of the presence of God, then we can fall back on the fact that God will continue to provide to everything we need for our fulfillment and prosperity and full expression of the nature of our being. And the same thing for health. If we look at a healing of a disease as a healing of the disease, then that disease has been healed and everything else is the same, and there's no reason to think there won't be another occurrence of that disease or a similar one or another one. But if we look at the healing of the disease as a demonstration of the fact that God is present, then the presence of God will preclude any reoccurrences of that disease or anything similar. Do you get that? Is that clear? Mm-hmm. So if we're demonstrating things, we're just exactly demonstrating that thing. If we think of a demonstration as having demonstrated a thing, it's just exactly that thing. But if we realize that it is in fact a demonstration of the presence of God, then we have God in our consciousness, and the potential is truly unlimited. So it's important not to limit our demonstrations, our success stories, if you will, to the material aspect, but always realize that this is just a clearer, what I'm looking at now is a clearer picture of God, which was always present, and because now there's more of God being realized. The more God we realize, the more harmony we realize, because God is harmonious, and the more God we realize, the less chug we realize, and therefore the more harmony we realize, and the less disharmony we realize. So, demonstrating the presence of God is as much as we can hope for, and it's truly hoping for the infinite. It's really being very greedy, trying to demonstrate the presence of God, just going for God. Another note here is there is no such thing as a dollar bill except apart from the consciousness of the individual which produced it. And think about this. This means that if you have a dollar bill in your hand, that's your material sense of something spiritual, which your consciousness has produced. Not somebody else. Your consciousness has produced it. I keep telling people that, don't worry, the state of living you're at right now is out picturing of your consciousness. Don't worry about switching jobs, for example, because your consciousness has produced your current situation of living, so we know what your consciousness of living standard is, and it will produce it that same level or a higher level in any job. So realize that your current living situation is not a reflection of your hard work or your talent or your discipline or your anything at all. It's a reflection of your consciousness. Now, how your consciousness got to be the way it is may be a result of hard work and discipline and such lies, but your current living standard is a reflection of your consciousness, and you can afford to trust that your consciousness will not step backwards on its own, and so you will find this level of living or maintained, and it will improve as you work on your consciousness. The note here that it's just a good topic to contemplate on when you want to. There is no such thing as God and. All there is God. And God is infinite. And God is everything. And anything we see is not something in addition to God. It's our material sense of God, or of Chub. But there's no such thing as God and. God is everything. God is, and everything is all of God. So that's a ponderable for a while. And carrying it out there, the change in attitude when you go out there is, if you're dealing with the supply problems, the saner approach. One approach is, how can I get what I need? But the saner approach is, how can I begin pouring what I need? Or in general, if your life is not abundant, the question is, in what way am I not pouring? And if you want your life to be fuller, look around for areas in which you are not pouring. Are you not pouring love? Are you not pouring companionship? Are you not pouring forgiveness? Are you, what spiritual things are you not pouring? And begin there. See if there's always a point where everything that's important has been said, and anything that's added will probably add confusion. No, that's not that's it. How can I pour is the question. If you want more companionship in your life, be a companion. If you want more love in your life, love more. If you want more money in your life, spend more. But of course, there's some interesting considerations there, but which we can come to in the workshop if you want. But money in your bank account is not supply. It's frozen in there and not doing you or anybody else good. It's the putting the money out that realizes it, that brings it into expression. And Meg also said, when I write a check to pay a bill, she said, I think how greedy I would be if I always wrote the check for twice the amount. She was thinking that if she wrote the check for each bill for twice the amount, she would be pouring twice as much, and so she would get that much more back, because there's two things here. What I'm putting out into the world is what comes back to me. And specifically, those I'm paying it to are me. There's only one being, so what I'm doing, if I give you $5, I'm giving it to me. It's just transferring it from one pocket to the other. So pouring, that's interesting, pouring, if I got $5 in my pocket, it does absolutely no good to anybody. But if I give you the 5, I have a short story about, so I give you the 5, and you think, oh my God, thank God, I can finally pay Jim the $5 I owe him. And so you pay Jim $5, and Jim says, thank God, I finally got the 5 I owe Mike. And so he pays Mike, and Mike said, yay, finally I can give Lee the $5 I owe him. And the $5 comes back to me. And 3 debts have been paid. 4 debts have been paid. And 4 debts have been eliminated. And whereas if I had kept the $5 in my pocket, everybody's still be in debt for $5. So that's all in our heads. The fact is that it is what that casting your bread on the water thing, once again, which I hate. But what I put out is what I get. And what that really means is what I put out is what can come back to me. What that really means is what I pour can come back to me. By putting it out, that means I'm realizing, I'm giving it reality, I guess a practical aspect of this would be, if you are feeling short on wardrobe, go through your wardrobe and find all the stuff that you don't wear regularly and give it to Goodwill, or a friend, or somebody, start pouring. Clearly it's true of love, clearly it's true of companionship, it's just whatever you're missing, start pouring that. And if you just want a fuller life, look around for any areas in which you're not pouring that probably you're not aware of the fact that you're lacking these things, but look around for areas in which you're not pouring and start. This is why Paul Gorman is so strong on the giving self. His second book, I think, was called The Giving Self, and as strong as the miracle self is the giving self. And this is that we're talking about some of the stuff that's foundational, I'm sure. Although I haven't talked to him, but I'm sure it's why he immediately moved into the giving self, because what I'm pouring is what's coming back. And it's also another practice is if you want more materials supply in your life, like I said, start spending more, but this is like start tithing. And don't think of tithing necessarily as 10%. You could, but make an agreement to tithe 1% of your income. You see, in tithing, in committing, and this means, at the first of every month, or whenever income comes in, immediately you give 1% to some cause that doesn't directly benefit you, some charity or whatever, whoever you feel kindred to, or whoever you want to give service to, but give 1% to these people. And by giving 1%, you will, first of all, be pouring. And second of all, you will be demonstrating to yourself that you didn't need that 1%. And third of all, so surreptitiously, you will be raising your vibrational level because you're now in a giving consciousness rather than a holding on to consciousness, okay? And very quickly, you'll find an opportunity to raise that 1% to 2% or 5%. And once you got it up to like 5%, it starts to really feel good. And so you'll then take it up to 8 or 10%. Joel talks about this friend of his that wound up giving 80% of all of his income to charity. And just because it was his experience that, you all heard that audio within the last month, one of the morning audios. They asked him, how does it feel what does it feel like to give away $1 million? And he said, it's sort of funny, he said, because it always comes right back. So you'll discover very quickly that the more, that if you're tithing 2%, suddenly there's more to tithe with, and it's easy to, you won't be tithing 4% of the same, you'll be tithing 4% of the additional amount that you have, and then it'll keep growing that way, so that you'll have the experience of pouring and you'll have the experience of that multiplying. So think about all these things and play with them. And I am going to stop there, and we'll take a break until the top of the hour, 4 o'clock here, whatever time it is where you are, and then we'll start up on questions and answers. I'd like, especially if there's anything about Ho'oponopono or anything else, or how to implement this, how to increase my supply, how to, any questions that come up to us, we'll do that at the top of the hour. Until then, try to remain pretty much in the silence to not break the consciousness that we've been developing in the first hour. I'll see you at the top of the hour.